Hello and welcome to another Breakthrough Expansion tier list. I'm Innocent Bubbles, and joining me once again today is ChipFilledAdam. Say hi.
How's it going?
Say hello.
Heyo.
And this is the second in our five-part series on the tier list for the Breakthrough cards. Today we're going to be going through Soviets. Once again, we are only thinking about draft. We're not even considering ladder, so please do take in mind this is purely a draft tier list. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. 128 rifles. Dynamo, how do you rate this?
I don't think this is a great card. Again, one health units really suffer from removal. The pincer ambush effect's really nice with a 3 attack unit. It could be good, well guarded. But other than that, I wouldn't pick this very often.
Whereabouts would you put it in the tier list?
I would give it a C.
C. And Adam, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the same things that Dynamo said. One health dies to Bloody Sickle, it dies to Tora Tora Tora, it dies to just about everything. 3 attack with Pincer is difficult or 3 attack with Ambush is difficult for early units to deal with, but they could just have orders to remove it, so it's a C.
Alright, and the 455th Rifle Regiment, I believe. Or no, 458th, sorry, Rifle Regiment. Adam, where do you place this?
That's another C tier card. It has some interesting combos with Bloody Sickle and just other general Soviet self-damage cards, but the likelihood of you being able to get those in draft, it's completely random. You just may never see a Bloody Sickle at all in your draft. And if you're not able to do any self-damage when you deploy this, it's kind of just a poorly statted 2 cost. There's plenty of 1 cost units that are 1. So it's a C.
Do you agree with that, Dynamo?
Yeah, it's got a very underwhelming stat line. It's going to trade mid game with any 3K unit, even if it gets a buff off. It's not going to have enough time to get any strength. I'd give it a C.
And Lesser of Two Evils. Dynamo, where do you place this?
So the Soviet kit really struggles with draw. This is one of the draw options. It's more of a sifter card than anything. So I'm just going to give this a C. There is some better draw options in the Soviet kit, so this is kind of underwhelming.
Sure. Adam, anything to add to that?
Yeah, Lesser of Two Evils is just a fairly underwhelming card. 2K to draw 2 and then discard a card is not the best. If you can combine it with some things like Supply Chain, it makes it, slightly better. Or maybe like a Betty or, cards that have good discard effects. But otherwise, it's just, the likelihood of getting those combos makes it pretty weak. So it's a solid C.
And Reckless Assault. Adam, where do you place this?
Well, this card is pretty bad. It's easily a D. You can maybe, if you have like some very other bad choices, you can take this in and use it to finish off your opponent on a turn where you might not have been able to without the buff. But it's just so risky that you'll end up essentially killing yourself by buffing up your units with Reckless Assault, and then the enemy just trades into them and you die.
Sure. Anything to add to that, Dynamo?
This is a finisher card. You're not going to use this early in the game, and that kind of makes this card very situational. And you're looking for consistency in draft, so I would not pick this at all.
Alright, and Spiring. Dynamo, where do you rate Spiring?
I picked this as a B tier card. I know I'm going to get flamed for this, but you do get those powerful research cards, but you're spending more credits to spend more credits. The tempo loss could be too great for the return that you're getting from it. Um, in certain situations, it could be okay. So we're just going to drop it in the B tier. Yeah, it's one of those weird spots. A lot of people love this card, so I'm sure there's some mixed feelings with this, but I give it a B.
And Adam, any opinions on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's very tempting to want to rate this as like an A or even a potentially S tier card because of just how fun it is. But when you look at it in terms of actual value provided, there's definitely a lot of other choices that would be much better to pick, say like a hammer or bloody sickles or from the peoples. If you're comparing this to those, the choice is pretty easy, really, what you should be grabbing. So unfortunately, I think it really does have to be something like a B tier.
And the Yak 7, where do you place that, ChipFilledAdam?
So I personally rate the Yak 7 as an S tier. I think Soviets is one of the nations with the least card draw. Breakthrough made that a little bit less of a problem with things like By the Sword. But the Yak 7 is really good at solving that card draw problem. If you can slap this thing down on turn 2 and your opponent has no way to remove it, you just get free cards. Sure, it costs you 1 damage to your HQ a turn, but that's almost a non-effect. I mean, for that to be seriously detrimental, this thing would need to be around for like 5 turns or more. And at that point, you've gotten so much value from the extra cards you've been given that it's not that big of a deal.
Sure. And Dynamo, anything to add to the Yak 7?
I haven't had a lot of experience with this card yet. Like you said, the draw aspect of this card really makes it shine. And the stat line alone for a 2K plane is decent with the 1 operation cost. I think for me, it's more to be seen. I definitely say it's an S tier card with the draw aspect, but to be seen.
And Confusion. Dynamo, where do you rate Confusion?
I love this card. This is a 2-for-1 card. This is definitely a snap pick for me. Being able to steal one of those units, trade it into one of theirs, and kill both. You're basically getting a 2-for-1 for 3. Very few cards do that for 3K, so this is an easy pick for me.
And Adam, any opinions on Confusion?
Yeah, Confusion's just another great Soviet removal. They already had things like Hammers and From the People, and now they just have another one. It's very easy to get 2-for-1 trades using this on turn 4 or even 5. And just that potential tempo swing that you get is great. Also, there's the added bonus of Earl factories. If you're able to get them in combination, you can take their unit, trade with it, and then turn it into a 4-cost unit of your own.
And the PE2 FT Bomber, Adam, where do you rate this?
So this is a card that I haven't gotten to use a lot in draft. Just going off of stats alone, it's not the worst. Something to compare it to is the Russian 4-cost bomber that's a 3/4, and it has 1 less credit cost to deploy if you have a US unit. So this is 1 cheaper all the time, and it has 1 less damage. On top of that, it has this added, effect where just no deployment effects happen while this is on the field. If you have a mono Soviet deck, this is pretty good because most Soviet cards either don't have deployment effects or they have negative deployment effects, like deal 1 damage or 2 damage even to your HQ. And the potential for hitting B-17s or Avengers, them not being able to use their deploy effects is pretty good in draft because people usually grab those. So it's a little hard to place, but I say it's a B tier, I think.
Sure. Dynamo, where would you place this?
Yeah, stat line kind of mediocre. nothing to write home about, but it has an interesting deployment effect. One thing that's really preventing it from being A or S tier is it all depends on who your ally nation is. A lot of the other nations really rely on those deployment effects, and you're just kind of negating that, which is actually going to not synergize well with your deck overall. So, yeah, this is a hard one to place, but I think it's a B tier.
And the T28, Dynamo, where do you rate the T28?
So, looking at stat line, pretty underwhelming. 3K 2-3, not a great stats. Where this card really shines is adding that pincer unit to a unit that has an amazing deployment effect that you can get back into your deck and draw into it again. B-17s, Avengers come to mind right off the bat. There's some other great cards that are great trading cards that you want to get back into the battlefield. This card will do that for you. So, as far as where it falls, I think a B is where it sits, just because it's really underwhelming on its own stat line. I think we just pick it depending on what other pieces are in your deck that makes this card strong.
Okay, that makes sense. And the T28, Adam, any opinions on it?
Yeah, I mean, the stats are a little underwhelming, so you really are just using this for its deploy effect, or its pincer, rather. And that pincer is either good or okay or bad, depending on what units you have to combine it with. Very situational pick, maybe if you have US as your ally, or potentially even Germany, it can be quite good. Otherwise, maybe less so. So I think it's a B.
And the 35th Mountain Rifles, Adam, where do you place these guys?
The 35th Mountain Rifles is an A for sure. You can think of this as a one more expensive 3rd Marines with one less op cost and also Alpine. You're probably not going to get its special if it's discarded from your deck, deploy it to the field effect in draft. But what you will get is a nice statted unit and maybe Alpine synergy.
And Dynamo, any opinions on the Mountain Rifles?
Yeah, it's a solid pick. Just negating the passive. It's a 5/5 right off the bat. Great stat line. Just get the Alpine bonus. And if you can get it off on turn 1 or 2, that's even better. So definitely an A pick.
And by the sword, Dynamo, where do you rate that?
So I said earlier, Soviets really struggled with draw. This card is just what you need for draw in Soviet. It's so good. You get to draw equal to the amount of enemies on the battlefield. Usually with draft, uh, you're probably going to be trading 3 to 4 units on the board at any one time. So you're basically getting maybe 3 or even 4 cards for 4K. Just amazing value. It's just a snap pick for me.
Yeah, straight to S tier. Adam, any opinions on the By the Sword?
Yeah, I mean, you can pretty much think of By the Sword as a cheaper Mobilize in a lot of cases. It's not that much of a stretch for the opponent to have 3 cards on board. And if they have more than that, you just draw even more. It's very, very credit efficient card draw. Great
Sure,
card.
makes sense. And the Zis 2, Adam, where would you place this?
So, personally, I really quite like the Zis 2. In a lot of ways, I kind of see it as like a little bit more of expensive Katusha that guarantees 2 damage rather than, the 50% chance of rolling high or low. However, realistically, if you actually take a look at the numbers, 2 damage, 2 attack, 4K, and then 1 to operate. It has this pincer blitz effect, which you'll usually really only get to use with the Zis itself because it's so expensive to deploy. As much as I would want this card to be an A or even an S, it's really looking more like a C just by going with how expensive it is for how little stats you get.
And Dynamo, thoughts on the Zis 2?
It's kind of interesting. I had a very interesting conversation to Chip about this one. I really rate this a D card. That's my gut reaction to it. 5K for 2 damage just seems very expensive to me. The pincer on a different unit, you're looking at a 12K combo here, which is very underwhelming. He did make a great point though. If you need a clutch 2K hit, this card will come in handy. So I'm going to bump this up to a C tier. So it was kind of, we were seeing both sides of the coin on this card. So it's very interesting how different play styles see how this card plays out.
And the 222nd Guard Rifles, Dynamo. How do you feel about these guys?
So this one's a tough one, because in my streams I always harp about negative tempo, and this card can be a potential negative tempo, very expensive. But I really like this card. I mean, great stat line. But the pincer effect is right where it shines. You put this on like a guard unit or a big unit or something like that. Now you've got two 17th style passives on the board, which can be very difficult to deal with. So it's kind of a risk reward kind of card. It is a gamble. If they do remove it, it's really negative tempo on your side. But I really like this card.
And where would you place it in the end? Was it A tier?
A tier, yes, definitely an A tier.
And Adam, how do you feel about the 222nd Guard Rifles?
Yeah, they are well statted for being 7-cost infantry. And that is a double bonus with their self-healing ability as long as they have the pincer. Self-healing can be a real trap, because it seems good on paper, but if a unit doesn't actually have that much HP, they can just get killed before they get the chance to self-heal on the start of your next turn. However, as an 8/8, it's pretty hard to deal 8 damage to a unit, even over 2 turns, between you trading into them and then them getting the chance to trade into you. And like Dynamo said, if you're sticking this on a big beefy guard, they might not even get the chance to trade back into you. So I think it's an A.
And the makeshift armored train, as we're calling it, where do you put these boys, the infantry regiment?
Well, I've had a lot of mixed experience with them on draft. I've played with them a little bit, and I've played against them a lot. Every time I run into them, they've caused me quite a bit of trouble. They're very expensive and kind of understated for their cost. I mean, if you go back to looking at the 222nd guards, they are an 8/8 for 7, whereas these are a 6/7 for 8. But they have guard, and they also put out a token every turn, which late game, in a top decking situation where they maybe don't have the right answer for this, it can be quite good. A little bit hard to place ultimately, but I think it's a C.
Yeah, Dynamo, do you agree with that?
Yeah, very expensive, very slow, negative tempo effect. Passive is not overwhelming. It's just kind of meh. I give this a C. I like the idea that this card exists, because you can definitely Ural or Red Hammer into this unit, which would be great value then. But on its own, I don't see me picking this card very often.
And minority recruits. Now, Dynamo, I seem to recall you guys saying that your opinions were going to be controversial when it came to this one. Where do you put minority recruits?
I'm going to have to give this a C card. I think this is what you would call a win more card. Very strong, very situational, and very expensive. You could lose tempo, you could lose board control trying to do this power move. Could lose you the game. Usually in draft, there's going to be some mediocre units in the board that you're not going to get great value out of this. I don't know. I give this a C. I know everybody was really excited about this card. They think it's super strong. I think in ladder, it very high potential, but in draft, there's so many better elites out there.
Adam, any feelings about the minority recruits before we close up?
Minority Recruits is a card that looks really fun. And certainly its concept is very fun, but its actual effect in draft can be potentially very underwhelming. You know, what you really get value from minority recruiting is things like big units like Pershings, B-17s, Avengers, maybe FWs or Leopolds for sure. Likelihood that your opponent will have those in draft? Kind of less so. It's not a guarantee like it would be in ladder, where these are cards that everyone's always putting in. So it can either be great, or it can be mediocre, or it can be bad if your opponent just doesn't have the right cards. I think it's a C. There's probably plenty of other elites you'd rather take, and even just other normal removal cards that are better than this.
Sure, that makes sense. And I think that's it for our Soviet tier list for the Breakthrough expansion. Be sure to keep an eye out for our next one. I believe we'll be doing Japan next. And yeah, stick about for the next one. Thank you, ChipFilledAdam, and thank you, DynamoD, for joining me.
Thanks, Bubbles.
Sure thing.